We should like to start now, ladies and gentlemen, with an opening remarks by the UNDP resident representative, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. You saw him this morning. He was in a panel. Please join me to welcome Niloy Banerjee, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning again, colleagues. Mr. Gerald Miranda, Mr. Daniel Kron, first, congratulations for putting together such a lovely group of stakeholders with such common and unified sense of purpose. It's very impressive. I have to apologize, I have a terrible cold, softy New York boy, and still adjusting to Malaysian weather. It's very, very impressive to see the degree of consensus in Malaysia among various stakeholders on what needs to be done. It's, for us in the United Nations, I've worked for the UN for 20 years, and this is the first time I feel we are not doing this alone. We are not in it alone with a few NGO partners, civil society partners, but I think for the first time, thanks to initiatives like yours, high energy, high quality, evidence-based, data-driven, and of course, deep moral convictions. I think I see an impressive consensus in Malaysia, but also in the region, to get to some common ideas and to agree on some common ways forward. This is, after years of shouting ourselves hoarse, and we are still shouting ourselves hoarse about particularly the 2°C challenge. We are a little bit heartened to see that more and more people are joining this campaign. I just want to say 2 words about the Sustainable Development Goals and their predecessors, the Millennium Development Goals. They're not an esoteric, beyond, out of the world concept. They're simply good development codified into a set of goals. Why? Because when you talk in clear numbers, it focuses the political conversation. It's much more generic to say we'll reduce plastics versus much more specific to say I will stop my consumption of plastics by 100 bottles of water a year. So you can see it focused what the Sustainable Development Goals regime did for us in the United Nations was to focus the conversation within a goal framework. But ultimately it was the political buy-in that we got by condensing the whole development discourse into a set of goals under which sits targets and indicators, and therefore they become measurable, and therefore they become a little more tangible, and can be debated, discussed, tracked, and therefore mitigating or adaptive actions can be put in place. So that's pretty much that. I just want to bring it down to Malaysia for 1 second. Obviously, very impressive economic growth, poverty down to 0.4%, but clearly big challenges. First, there is the notion of relative poverty that we need to talk about in Malaysia, particularly spatially relative. I mean, those of you who live in Kuala Lumpur, and as I am finding out as a new arrival, the cost of living in Kuala Lumpur is much higher than the cost of living in, say, Kuching. And therefore, the definitions of the poverty line need to be rethought a little bit. There's also issues of poverty that's determined by particular poverty that's more incident on particularly vulnerable groups, indigenous populations, migrant workers, women-headed households, and so on and so forth. So in a sense, Malaysia is now, by the way, the inequality challenge here is not as profound as most upper middle income countries face, but there are more nuanced, more granular challenges that we need to address. The second set of issues is around the environment. We discussed some this morning, but Malaysia is also a biodiversity hotspot. A global, so it's a global resource as much as a national resource for Malaysia. And in that, we have to first commend the government for keeping what Tun Mahathir had promised in 1992 at the Rio World Summit about keeping Malaysia's forest cover above 50%. And Malaysia is now closer to 55%. So that's, again, a huge political commitment to protecting biodiversity, to conservation. But some serious challenges emerge, and we are seeing these come through more pointedly in the last few months. I faced my first haze season here in Kuala Lumpur. We have to ensure community livelihoods coexist simultaneously with protecting biodiversity, with protecting species, with providing safe corridors for animals, with providing livelihood opportunities. And all of these, while not zero-sum in nature, they do need trade-offs and bargain solutions. And for that, the role of policy and incentives, they don't happen just by themselves. They need citizen action, they need policy, they need infusion of global good practice. We need to look at how other countries are doing it. And it's the aim of the United Nations to at least provide platforms for some of these bargain solutions to take place, for these discussions and conversations to take place, and for global good practice to be made available to you as you make choices, both as the private sector and as the public sector policymakers and as individuals and communities. Hopefully there is a role that the UN can, if you see the UN as your partner, and hopefully there's a role that we can figure out that's of use to you. The final issue is the institutional challenge, and I must say we in the UN are very encouraged to see that the current government has put huge emphasis on good governance, not in the ESG sense, which is already important, but the current government has put in very strong measures on corruption, public service reform, parliamentary strengthening, justice sector reform. So it's for the first time, UNDP has been in Malaysia since independence. It's the first time that UNDP has been in a governance programming area. We are actually doing governance work supporting the government of Malaysia. And this is a big change for us. This is a big change for Malaysia. This is a big opening up of democratic space. And of course, as most of you know, the big win has been the reduction in the voters' age to 18 earlier this year, which is a remarkable achievement. I think it's one that deserves a lot of kudos. Quickly going on to our what we think the private sector can really, where you can ramp up on the SDGs. Like with the Millennium Development Goals, we will find that with the SDGs, I mean, based on current trending, the current trends, SDG achievements will not be uniform across the world. There will be, at the macro level, there may be a better picture, but disaggregated by country, we'll see various different countries at different speeds of achievement. And that really brings the role of the private sector to the fore, because while governments have their mandates and their resources, private sectors can intervene, particularly in the production SDGs, if I may characterize it as that, which is the sort of goal 8, goal 9, jobs, infrastructure, etc. but also in the protection and sustainability SDGs, goal 13, 14, 15, climate change, oceans, terrestrial ecosystems. And some of that you will be discussing in the next few sessions. A sector that generates 90% of global jobs, the private sector, has to be part of this change. And again, I'm blown away, literally, by how well Malaysia has created this drive and energy for multi-stakeholder engagement in these conversations. And there is room to move forward in a co-creative, co-dependent way. But I'm also finding that there is now an increasing work among consultancy companies, among even manufacturing companies, doing the metrics behind the scenes on linking sustainability to good business. So I've just found this statistic from Bloomberg, which said that 72% of Malaysian asset managers are saying they have incorporated ESG into their business decisions. Now that's not very well known, certainly in the United Nations community, but that's a phenomenal achievement. I have been in discussions since I've arrived here with banks, with private sector, with other private sector companies who are now voluntarily moving their asset portfolios to ESG compliant investments, who are managing, whose asset management portfolios are being changed to look at ESG compliance at some cost to their immediate short-run business and profitability prospects. The private sector is also the driver of innovation. And we, heaven knows, we need innovation to crack some of the most difficult, complex challenges. It's the trade-offs and bargain solutions I was talking about. They're not going to go away just by conventional, regular, path-dependent thinking. We need to hack some of these solutions. We need to move forward on this. And that's why, I take great energy from this audience and from the participation, from the composition of this audience. I just want to touch upon finally on one thing, and which is we are all moving into an era of very enlightened consumerism. Millennials are far more informed, are certainly far better appraised. And as you saw with the UN General Assembly and the climate summit that was held at the UN General Assembly this year, there is a real sense of intergenerational tension that somehow my generation is leaving behind too much of an environmental burden, particularly an environmental burden on future generations to come. And there are countries where future generations are now asking for paying it forward and looking for want of a better word, compensation for all the extra work that they will have to do, but also the extra costs they will have to bear, both financial and non-financial, for the kind of planetary load that we are leaving behind. Portugal is actually doing an audit of a future forward way, which is to look at what exactly quantifying what the burden of current practices of the current generation, consumption and production, are leaving forward for the next generation and generations to come, and trying to then quantify it as an upfront cess tax that in as many taxable goods and products. It's still in work in its infancy, but just to say that an enlightened society, an enlightened consumer is upon us, and we owe it to them, ladies and gentlemen, to modify and do the best that we can do for them. I'll stop with a recent T-shirt slogan I saw, "There is no planet B." Thank you very much for having me here.
Our thanks goes out to Mr. Niloy Banerjee, United Nations Development Program Resident Representative for, of course, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. That's the opening remarks for our mid-morning session. We're moving quickly along now, ladies and gentlemen. Our next eminent speaker will talk on the power of small. Would you please join me to welcome Urbanice Malaysia's Chief Executive Officer under the Ministry of Urban Wellbeing, Housing and Local Government, Norliza Hashim.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Very good morning to everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah, thank you and congratulations to Sustainable Brands. A very impressive event. My name is Norliza, and actually I represent a very new organization called Urbanice Malaysia. Urbanice Malaysia is actually a government company actually. It's a CLBG under the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. We are only 2 years old, and I thought that it's good to also talk a little bit about how organizations could actually help pave the way for the sustainable agenda. So in the work that we do as a Center of Excellence, we looked in particular at how to move the sustainable nation agenda for the country. And in doing that, one of our key roles is to execute the policies of the ministries. And our focus is on not only on cities, but also on the well-being of the communities that actually lives in Malaysia. So we focus our work around 4 key areas. One of it is knowledge platforms. Second one is to look at new innovations to solve some of the urban problems that we have. Also to work with a lot of agencies, universities, academia, that's already been doing research. So we want to see how we could put that on the ground. And of course, we want to work with as many partners as possible, public, private, or anyone that's actually joining this pathway towards sustainability. And probably there's many of you here in this room. So as an organization under the ministry, we are a very unique organization because we are a company guaranteed by the government, but we also have a board that actually governs us. So in a way, we try and support the whole framework that's within the ministry. And as you know, we take care of 154 local governments within the ministry. And we also have a housing agenda. And of late, we also talk a lot about sustainable communities in the ministries, as well as moving the agenda on how innovation, smart solution could be one of the solutions towards making cities more efficient, better managed, and of course sustainable. So in moving that, Urbanice is looking at how we also link to some of the major global goals. And as you know, now we have the 17 goals. And in Malaysia, we have many blueprints, many master plans that's been crafted. So what we are trying to do as we work with cities, as our work actually straddles a lot with the cities in Malaysia. There are 300 over cities in the country. We try to realign rather, the kind of work that they are doing along with the SDG goals, And in doing that, we also create more awareness on the focus of the new urban agenda, where we are trying to accelerate the sustainable focus that cities should be doing in order to transform and to be effective in the plans that they are preparing. Of course, we just launched our shared prosperity vision. I think it's a fantastic vision, and it's a vision that actually is very much linked to the sustainable urban agenda. So generally, you're looking at, even if you want to talk about development, even if we are focusing on growth, which we have been doing for the last 25 years, but the well-being of our people is actually almost an important equation to that growth and development that we've always spoken about. So what we are trying to do at Urbanice is, not to have too much of an agenda, because it's very confusing to the people, to cities, So we advocate the idea of having this single universal agenda, where the importance and the focus is actually on the people. How do we create a city that actually responds to the people's needs? The importance of that, listening to what they want, listening to what is really needed today. Because I think Malaysia as a whole, even though our numbers are good, we are considered not poor, but we still have urban poor, not hungry, but we still have people with 1 meal a day. So there are lots of things that probably we took for granted, and a lot of things are also at a very high level. We have numbers which are measured at maybe the national level, but we do not know whether at our city level, at our community level, at our neighborhood level, what is those numbers? How do they look like, We know, for example, in Kampung Kerinci, we all know where that is, Lembah Pantai, there are still three families living in a house. There are also many children that never go past their high school. And there are also families that only have 1 meal a day. So this is just outside Bangsa. So how do we actually get this information across, So I think it's very important. And at Urbanice, we've been doing a lot of forums, So much so that people think that we are event organizers. We are not, actually. We've been working with different partners, but the forum helped us to actually allow for a platform for people to actually come and share not only their work, but their issues, and also different stakeholders. And the beautiful part about the forums that we organize is that it brings different stakeholders at various levels, community levels, people who would not dare to come into our hall are starting to come now because they know that, we have like grassroots people coming just to share their views and speak to decision makers, politicians, parliamentarians, So we hope that as time comes by, we'll be able to have a more, open session, a more vibrant discussion where we are able to share these issues more openly. I still find that the discussions are quite held back. People are restraining themselves when they speak about some of these issues in a much, open platform. So when we had the World Urban Forum, we had 30,000 people, but it's just not about the numbers. It was just about the diversity of the subject matter that was discussed. And I felt that, for the first time, I really felt that in my 26 years of pursuing this agenda, I really feel suffocated because there's so much of things that needs to be fixed, needs to be done, So we are trying now to work with cities, and I hope the public sites, the private sectors, and the industries will also come forward to the cities, because what we want to do is advocate them to actually prepare a roadmap towards defining how to actually achieve their sustainable goals for their city. So this could be a city as small as Kulim, as small as Baling, it doesn't matter, because I think cities, even small or big, it's actually people, people are living there and they need to be actions needs to be taken. So what we are trying to help them is that we are working with a few now, big and small. We're telling them that don't worry, just tell us what you have on the table, and we'll help to realign them to the SDGs, And we also speak to the local people. We also speak to the decision makers, the councillors, to try to revisit their vision, revisit their wish list, so that it's much more structured in the goals that we would like them to go forward to. And in doing that, we also want them to craft out what are their urgent lists towards achieving some of these actions at the local areas. So I think what we are trying to do here is that we want people to start declaring their actions. It's time for actions. It's not about planning, just about planning. It's too much planning probably. And at the end of the day is that we would like them to eventually even prepare a voluntary local reporting so that they are able to understand, monitor, take it to next few steps, even more year to year. So this is part of the capacity buildings that cities need, and I hope with so many people in this room, you are also able to assist some of our city councillors, city governments, because I think they really need everyone's help. So we see many cities around the world have started to do this. There's no city in Malaysia that has done this actually, unfortunately. Even our biggest city, Kuala Lumpur, we have not got a roadmap in terms of identifying what is our plan for sustainability. So I think it's very important, even if you have to write 2 pages, 3 pages, it's still an action plan. So that is something that we are trying to inculcate and build. And in doing that, we've actually developed a mobile application, which is going to be launched very soon. Now it's on testing. The only reason to do this is to just reach out to as many people as possible, because that seems to be the way forward. People are more on their mobile than anything else. So we want, so it'll be a platform where new information will be added, but we also want to add new initiatives done by cities so that there's a sharing platform, because I think learning from one another is very, very important. It also gives you the confidence that you're doing the right thing. And of course, one of the things that we also do as an organization, we are very small, there's only 11 of us in the organization, but we've been trying to also roll out some of the policies ourselves, testing our own policies to see what works and what doesn't. So we start as small as building community hubs using recycled containers, And of course, it's not just about building it, it's actually about whether or not we understand what such kind, or what are their requirements, what would they need it for. For example, when we built this for the bring-in community in Kepong, they actually have a huge facility by the City Hall of Kuala Lumpur, just less than a kilometer away. So we were wondering why do you need another community center, Because they said that we have to apply in order for us to use it, and we have to have a schedule for us to use it. So I think it is trying to understand when you talk about such kind of communities living in affordable homes area, they don't work 9 to 5. Sometimes their work finish as late as 10 p.m. When we did this project, our meetings are all after 10 p.m. at night because they are on shifts, So it's very difficult sometimes to expect that, things are normal, because it's not normal for some communities also. But what small projects do, such as this does, is that it gives them empowerment. It gives them the satisfaction that they own something. So these are things that we've been doing, and we also run a program called the Malaysia 100-Year Cities Program. And we'd like to reach out. When I look at some of the names here, I also would like to reach out to as many as possible that could be mentors to our students, because this program is purely for our local universities, where we open up on a grants program and to encourage our local universities to come up with ideas and solutions to overcome some of the urban issues that we are facing. So last year when we had this program, we had 11 local universities. So I'm very happy that all the mainstream universities were involved, and we had some also private universities that came to be part of the event. So the idea is to bring in the industries, allow them to connect to our local students, because I am also a local graduate, and it's very difficult that, we don't open our doors very much to industries actually. This is actually how the system works in our public universities. So this is something that is very important for us. And we've also just recently set up a Malaysia Urban Innovation Hub. And our focus is on 3 areas: urban mobility, urban systems and services, and urban housing and communities. So we looked at issues that is most pertinent, especially with regards to city management, city efficiency. For example, urban housing and communities. We might be able to build the low-cost housing, but we definitely cannot maintain the houses. That's why you have a very, after 5 years, it will look very, very bad, So we're trying to go around the idea on how do you make cost of living affordable, not just houses affordable. So the idea of making urban systems more affordable, urban services more affordable, urban mobility more affordable. And this is where our role is actually to work with any kind of industries to test it out. For example, this is a project we did with Anywheel. Anywheel is a micro-mobility organization in Singapore. And we're trying to work out on, why when we had the old bikes and everyone there, now if you bring a bike to any of the local council, they will say, no, we don't want, because of what happened with the old bikes. So because you know why, there's no regulation to manage this. So what we are doing now is testing this, piloting this, and actually in doing that, we are helping to write the regulations in order to make it work. So let's see, we are piloting this in 3 universities now, and also in Penang, where we are having an event soon, next week actually, the Asia Pacific Urban Forum. So we are piloting this at Bayan Baru, Bayan Lepas area as a last mile solution. We are also looking at renewable energy, especially towards making affordable, targeting the affordable home areas, where we are going to PPR areas, putting up solars at any available space, just to create some form of revenue that could offset the maintenance fee for the common area. And so most of our power that we are generating is actually used for common areas, not for the individual houses. So these are the small works that we do, but some PPR houses that we have in Kuala Lumpur, we owe TNB like millions, because they will never be able to pay bills for common area. They might be able to pay bills for their houses, but they will not be paying for the common areas. So I think this is some of the things that, small things, but we never really take into consideration. So, so I guess that's what we do. So I see the signal from the back, and my time is up. But I just want to thank May, actually, and of course, Sustainable Brands for, I think we got connected in Malaysia Urban Forum, and I really like to reach out to you all, actually. You guys are the industries, and I actually represent the ministry, and we like to see as many of the solutions actually on the ground. So thank you very much for having me. Yeah, exactly. That is why I say, our forums are no longer designed for such kind, like what I'm doing now on stage. First of all our forums, can never be one speaker from one organization. It must be diversified gender balance, region balance, organizational balance, and so forth. But more important, all our forums are designed to actually encourage those actions. What are you doing? Rather than just telling us what are your products, And in Asia Pacific Urban Forum, we've actually designed what we call the Penang platform. Please look it up on our website, www.apuf7. We are also encouraging people to actually pledge. What is your pledge to make this happen? So I think we probably need to rethink about how we are doing discussions. We are doing all this, events such as this. At the end of the day, what is the outcome? Exactly. I am in total, agreement that enough talk, more actions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Norliza Hashim, Urbanice, Malaysia CEO, Ministry of Urban Wellbeing. It's time now for me to welcome our next speaker. Remember, we told you we've got a very tight schedule. She's it's CIMB Bank Senior Managing Director, Head of Group Sustainability, to talk about sustainable banking and finance. Please join me to welcome Luanne Sieh.
So, what am I going to talk about today? So I'm from a bank, obviously, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do in a bank for sustainability. But I think more importantly, I want to talk about why a bank is involved in this and why all companies should be involved in this and why all human beings should be involved in this. And the other thing, the other kind of key takeaway perhaps would be the fact that I've only been doing this for a year. Yeah, so I'm not a sustainability expert. But within a year, we have achieved quite a number of things, and we don't need to be experts to do something. And I want to share with you our journey and what we've done and how we've managed to get the ball rolling. Okay, so I think all of you would be familiar with this. So what is sustainability in the context of business? So I'm not going to talk about any industry in particular, but really, I'm sure all of you here work in some sort of company or you might be self-employed. But essentially, how do we ensure that in whatever we're doing to make money, to make profits, that we are not having negative impacts on the environment and on society and on people? Because, we do. All of us have negative impact. The very fact that we are sitting in this room with the lights and air conditioning means we are generating greenhouse gases. So, people will say to me, don't put in, our policy or our communications that we have negative impact. But the truth is, by being alive, you're having negative impact on the environment. So unless we are not alive, and this is a debate that I have with people in the bank, unless we're not alive, then we are having negative impact. And why is this important? So, just take, for example, all of you would be familiar with what happened in Sungai Kim Kim, right? So essentially, some companies, instead of disposing of their waste in a proper manner, what they did was they chucked it in the river. Now, why did they do that? They did that to increase their profitability, because by cutting corners, they reduced their costs. But they did not think about what the cost was to the environment and to other people. So the whole river was contaminated and died. People fell sick, kids fell sick, businesses and schools closed. All that is cost. It's just cost to other people. So the question is, what is your cost to other people, and what can you do to kind of minimize that? So that is what we talk about when we talk about sustainability in business. Now, why should we care? I mean, we've been doing this for so long. So why should we, act? Why should we do something differently? Well, so there's lots of stats up here. Today, the world population is at around 7.7 billion. In the next decades, by 2100, it's projected to be at 11 billion. Today itself, the world is not able to sustain the kind of lifestyle that all of us human beings have. Resources are being depleted. Of course, global heating already at 1 degree. And when it gets to, by the way, so I don't want to put a downer on everyone, but the Paris Climate Agreement, 1.5 degrees, we are going to hit 1.5 degrees pretty soon. So that is no longer achievable the way we are going today. The way we're going today, we might be looking at, sorry, did I just shock you? This gentleman dropped his phone. So if we keep going the way we're going, we're looking at global heating of 4, 6, 8 degrees. And in that situation, can you imagine what life is going to be like? Can you imagine, how businesses are going to operate with sea levels rising? And let me give you a picture of Malaysia. With sea levels rising, up to a fifth of Malaysia might be underwater. So imagine this, right? And by the way, a fifth is probably where all of you live, yeah? So we're not going to have a house to live in. And with less land, there is also less place to plant food. So what are people going to eat? And to get food, we're probably going to have to chop down more forest, hence more global heating. Even now, we're projecting crop yields to start declining across, the continent. And, by the way, there's also going to be 1 billion migrants in Asia Pacific. So, and most of these from Africa, that's where the huge population explosion is happening. So, basically, there is going to be no life or business as usual if we go the way we're going. So, this whole, thing about, it's somewhere else, it's someone else's problem, I'm sorry, it's not, because it is real, it will be drastic, and it is going to happen soon. So in a world like this, we're not going to be sitting comfortably in this hall, we're not going to have any place to stay, we're not going to have businesses, we are not going to have enough food to eat. So it's going to get pretty bad. So we have a choice now, and the choices that we make today has a huge impact on what happens tomorrow. And this is the world that your kids are going to be living in. I don't have kids, partly because I don't want to bring somebody who has no choice into a world like this. But yeah, so we have that option now. Your kids are not going to have that option, or they're going to have less and less option the longer we wait. So, okay, so I hope I've convinced all of you why, as human beings, you should care. Now, why does my bank care about this? There are many reasons. So we first started when our investors started to ask us questions about what we're doing. Our customers as well, so we did a number of focus groups, and our customers said, hey, we want to know that we are banking with the good guys, Future-proofing as well, because when we give out loans, we look at the environmental and social risks that come with those loans. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but essentially, for example, if we lend to a company that is by the seaside and our collateral is the land, now that land may not be there in the next 10 years. So that is our risk, and that's financial impact to us. Of course, our employees as well. But most of all, we're doing it because we know that we have to, because it is simply the right thing to do, and if we don't do it, we're probably all gonna die. So it's a combination of value, so value protection, value creation, but also values, because it is in our values that this is the right thing to do, that whatever we do, we don't negatively impact other people. And of course, a lot of money is going to be needed annually to do things like build resilient infrastructure, education, etc. So what have we done in CIMB? Now, we accelerated pretty quickly. We didn't have a team, so my team started a year ago. We had some push from Bank Negara, although only on the Islamic side. But what we've done is we have now embedded this sustainability pivot into our strategy. Now, this is our core strategy. It's got 5 pillars, and sustainability is one of the 5 pillars. And it is as important to CIMB as customers, as digital, as data, as people. So that's how important it is to us. It's not just something we're doing on the side, it is something that is core to our DNA. And by the way, I don't mind showing you this because every bank strategy is the same, so it's okay. Take photos, go ahead. By the way, I'm kidding. I do sit in the strategy team, by the way, which is the other practical thing that, if you're thinking of starting this, you should consider. I don't know how many of you are from marketing and branding here, but when, if you have sustainability sit in branding and marketing, it kind of sends a different signal. Yeah, because it's not about looking sustainable, it is being sustainable. So anyway, so we've signed up to the Principles for Responsible Banking. So, we were one of the 30 banks globally that helped to draft these principles, and they were just launched in New York just last month. Now, I'm not going to go through this, but it tells us, or the principles guides us on what it means to be a responsible bank. And I want to talk about this. This is our 5-year sustainability roadmap. And this is a plan that we've developed for, to be executed across all countries in the next few years. So just very simply, there are 3 core pillars to our sustainability strategy. The first is what we call the group. Essentially, we ourselves as a bank, what can we do? So we have buildings, we have people, what are we doing with those? The second bucket is the biggest one. It's about what we can do with our clients, through our clients. And the third pillar is CSR. So through CIMB Foundation, as well as our CSR in other countries, what are we doing with communities? And of course, underlying all that is the whole governance and risk. This is where our policies sit. This is where the accountabilities are made clear. So for example, we've embedded accountability for sustainability at the board level. And of course, stakeholder advocacy and engagement, so which is why I'm here, because I want to get everybody on this journey with me. So just to give you a few insights on what we're doing. So this is sustainable action, what we're doing for the group. So things like reviewing our carbon footprint, energy and waste management plan, but we're also looking at our climate strategy and what this means for us in the next, 10 to 20 years. We're also looking at sustainable supply chain. So for our vendors, we do a due diligence on our vendors before we appoint new vendors. Now, this is the most exciting thing, and this is where this impacts you guys. So this is in terms of what we do with our customers. So for example, so for all our customers, what we try to do, actually our entire policy lies in trying to minimize negative impact while creating positive impact. For example, for our retail people, our retail customers, we have discounted loans if you buy a green car or if you buy a GBI certified building, because we're trying to encourage people to go and do that. For businesses, we offer what you call sustainability-linked loans. So essentially, if the client or the borrower hits a number of pre-agreed targets, sustainability targets, we will give them a tiered discount on their loan. So this is kind of our part and what we're doing to encourage people and other companies to be more sustainable. So I was given the 3 minutes. I think I've got 2 minutes left. So I'm going to stop there. I can talk all day. But if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to us to collaborate, so for example, I just met WAO over there, and within 2 minutes, we figured out 2 different ways we can collaborate. So we're very, very open to collaboration and working with partners to advance this agenda. Thank you very much. So I've got some questions, I think. Why do financial institutions emphasize more on sustainability? I think I talked a little bit about that. So for all sorts of reasons, this is actually quite new for Malaysia, but Malaysia is quite behind in terms of sustainability in banks especially. If you look at other countries, Singapore, even Thailand, Indonesia, they're a lot further ahead. But this is coming, and this will become the norm in, I hope, in the next few years. Can I elaborate more on governance and risk? Okay, so some of the things that we've done is, so we set up the team, so me, plus my team in the various countries. We have put in place a group sustainability policy, and that has our core beliefs and policy statements. And what we do is we then take that policy and embed it through the organization in all the policies that we have in the bank. So for example, now, previously we had a property and admin policy. Now within that policy, we have embedded the need to reduce energy, to reduce waste, to look at the building materials, to conserve energy. So this is how we kind of drive it all the way down the organization. What do you do to build capacity with your potential customers and clients? Very good. So some of you may know that we have, that last week we ran a sustainability conference called the Cooler Earth. And that was actually a free conference that we had, and that was open. And that we do that to raise awareness. We do that to build capacity. It also makes life easier for us, because when we start asking clients, what is your emission, or what do you do with your waste, they are also more aware of why we are doing this. So yes, we do it for free, but there is also a business reason for it. And of course, we are going to be running a whole series of follow-up workshops for our clients, and there are many, many things that are coming up on the agenda. So, for example, we're going to have a series of workshops on modern slavery, maybe working with WAO on, gender equality, and all this we are going to do with our clients, for our clients, because we want our clients to be more sustainable. Okay, so I think that's all the questions.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much. A big
Okay.
hand, please, ladies and
Thank you
gentlemen.
very much.
Luanne, Sieh. It's very heartening to note that CIMB Bank is taking the lead with some of the examples given by Luanne earlier on the fact that, incentives have been given for loans if you go on the trajectory of sustainability. And I think many other financial institutions should actually follow suit. But it's good to know that Luanne is with us today, and CIMB is taking the lead on that one. Now, we've got so much more to discuss this morning. Just a quick reminder, we have 4 more speakers coming up. Questions on Slido. Reason why I'm repeating is I just saw about 5 people just join us. Welcome, okay? Slido.com is where you put your questions forward. Vote for the questions. The top voted questions will be asked first. Up next, H&M, Hennes and Mauritz. Sustainability Department, Wong, Xin-Yi.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone feeling? Good? Energy is still up? My name is Xin-Yi. I am the Sustainability Manager for H&M Retail in Southeast Asia. And it's my pleasure to be here today with you. So I'm going to start my presentation by giving you a little bit of the backstory of where H&M is from and who we are. I guess everyone knows what we do. And we were first founded in 1947 in Sweden. That's when our founder, Erling Persson, this is his picture right here, he had the groundbreaking idea to make fashion and design accessible and affordable to everyone, and not just the select few. Today, that means that we need to make sustainable fashion accessible and affordable to everyone. And it's with this clear business idea and our strong values and culture that has brought us to where we are today. So, currently, the H&M Group now has 8 brands under the group. You may recognize COS and Monkey. We have 4,987 stores in 72 markets. E-commerce in 50 markets. We have over 177,000 colleagues around the world. Our products are made in 2,383 supplier factories, most of which are located in Asia. And H&M alone has nearly 800 million customers' transactions per year. The purpose of this slide is just to illustrate how big H&M's influence and impact is on the fashion industry as well as the world at large. So I often get the question, what is it that I do? Because people see my name card and they're like, so you every day you just sit down in the office and do nothing. And I think the best way to put it is that myself and my colleagues around the world that work on sustainability are future-proofing our company. We need to help ensure that our company, as well as the fashion industry at large, can continue to operate in the way that the planet can afford, while still having a positive impact on our value chain, on the people, a positive impact on the people along our value chain, sorry. And this is how our value chain looks like. We start from design all the way to the customer use phase, and at each of these stages, we have a clear climate, water, as well as the social impact. And we have been integrating sustainability throughout our value chain since the late 90s. And we have been working on the key stages where we have the highest negative impacts to minimize the negative impacts and to enhance positive impacts. So you can see here that we have large impacts in the raw material stage, in the product manufacturing stage, and one thing that will surprise you is that in the customer use stage, that's when the clothes are in your hands, that actually contributes to one of the highest climate impact in the garment's life cycle. It's about 21%. So the way you wash and care for your garments really matter. But after working with this for about a decade, we realized that we need to bring our sustainability work to the next level. Because the fact is, there will be 8.6 billion people on the planet by 2030. And this has been quoted a few times by the other speakers as well. And we know that today, the way we are consuming right now, we will actually need 2 planets by 2050. But at the same time, with these 8.6 billion people on the planet, 3 billion of whom will belong to the middle income group, and there will be a great need to create jobs that enable social development and better livelihoods. And despite the rise of automation and technology, we still very much believe that the textile industry will continue to be a key industry in providing those jobs that will enable social development. So our challenge really is this: how can we continue to provide fashion in a way that enables social development to happen, but within planetary boundaries? Because we had to ask ourselves very simple questions, but profound ones, like, will we have enough cotton to make clothes? Or will we have enough land to grow cotton? And will we have farmers that will switch to food agriculture instead because there will be a greater demand? So those answers were really clear that we need to change our business. So this is where our new vision comes into place. We want to lead the change towards circular and renewable fashion while being a fair and equal company. And what I want to emphasize here is the part about leading the change. In my earlier slide, I shared about how big H&M is. We are one of the largest fashion retailers in the world, and that certainly comes with great responsibility. And we want to do the right thing. So we know that we are one of the very few companies in the industry that has the ambition, the resources, as well as the motivation to drive change, not only for our own company, but for the entire fashion industry. Because the challenges that we face in the fashion industry are not exactly H&M specific challenges, but they are industry-wide challenges that need to be solved by loud big players in the industry. Now, this vision is built upon 3 ambitions. The first one being 100% leading the change. We want to promote and scale innovation, to drive transparency throughout the global supply chain, as well as to reward sustainable actions with our customers as well as with our suppliers. The next one is that we want to be 100% circular and renewable, and I will be explaining a lot more about this in my coming slides. And last but not least, we want to be 100% fair and equal, to ensure that we provide fair jobs for all, not only in our own operations, but as well as in our supply chain, and to be stewards of inclusion and diversity. Now, how do we plan to become 100% circular and renewable? So we look at 5 key stages in our value chain. And this is applicable for both our commercial as well as our non-commercial goods. And the first stage is at design. This is when we need to start thinking about how can we design a product to extend its lifespan, to increase greater opportunities for reuse and recycling, or how can we design a garment to minimize cutting waste on the factory floor. So these are things that already need to be thought out at the very first stage so that the rest of the stages can follow suit in terms of circular thinking and design. Next stage, we look at material choice and production processes. So you saw earlier that this is where our impact is the highest. And we have set ourselves a milestone goal, and that is to use 100% recycled or other sustainably sourced materials by 2030. Today, we are already at 57%. And one of the ways we are doing this is through using more innovative, sustainable materials like this one right here. So this top was actually introduced through our Spring Conscious exclusive collection. And you see the oranges at the side. This top is actually made from orange peels from the juicing industry. So we are practically taking waste and creating it into a new high-value, high-quality silk-like material. So this just shows the kind of possibilities there are when it comes to fashion and circularity. So if you're ever in a H&M store, if you see this green hang tag, know that that particular garment is actually made from more sustainable materials. Next, we talk about product use. And here, as I mentioned earlier, it actually contributes to one of the highest climate impact in the garment's life cycle. And we feel that as a big company like ours, we have the responsibility as well as the ability to engage our customers in more sustainable behavior. So starting from this year, we have started to roll out what we call H&M Take Care. This is a line of products, guidances, as well as services, all aimed at helping our customers extend the lifespan of their garments. So in our stores in Europe, we have seamstresses that are in the stores that will help our customers with repair and alteration services. We sell eco-friendly detergents, as well as laundry bags that trap plastic microfibers, and even sewing kits. And all this comes with an online guidance tool that will help our customers to learn how to sew a loose button and whatnot. Lastly, we look at how we will roll out product reuse and recycling. So this is where we essentially close the loop. The very, very sad thing about the fashion and textile industry today is that only 1% of textiles are being recycled. This is due to the lack of technology we have today, and also due to the lack of infrastructure of collecting these garments. So back in 2013, H&M was the very first company to launch a global garment collecting initiative. So when you came in just now, you would have seen a box. When you come tomorrow, please remember to bring your unwanted garments or textiles, and you actually get a voucher for it. We have rolled this out in 40 of our stores in Malaysia, and since 2013, we have collected more than 1,000 tons of garments and textiles. So these garments and textiles are actually sorted according to their qualities. They are either reworn by being sold into second-hand markets, or they are either reused and turned into new products like cleaning cloths, and lastly, they are recycled into textile fibers to use as damping or insulation for the auto industry, or even to be made into new garments. And here, our goal is to increase the volume of collected garments globally to 25,000 tons per year by 2020. So the very, very fantastic thing about this garment collecting initiative is that it's actually a business model for us, right? And there's a surplus that's generated from this initiative. But H&M doesn't profit a single cent from this surplus. For the past 4 years, it has been donated to the H&M Foundation, where they have a 4-year partnership with the Hong Kong Research Institute of Textile and Apparel to come up with a commercially viable technology to recycle blended textiles. So today, most of the clothes that we wear are actually blended textiles, probably cotton and polyester blends, but there is no commercially viable technology to recycle this. So I just want to show you a quick video to see how this technology has come to life and now is now being tested at scale in Hong Kong. So I don't know about you, but looking at this really gives me a lot of hope and excitement for the future. A recycling technology that fits into a shipping container and is being rolled out in one of the most expensive cities in Hong Kong. So imagine the possibilities in all the other markets. So this is the very first sweater that has been made from that technology. This is a sweater that we sold at H&M, and it contains 70% recycled fibers, which is very unheard of in the fashion industry. So finally, we cannot talk about circularity without talking about climate. So whatever I mentioned earlier, those are milestone goals and actions that all lead to this ultimate goal of us wanting to become climate positive throughout our value chain by 2040. So we will be working on energy efficiency, ensuring that we use 100% renewable energy, and lastly, investing into natural and technological carbon sinks. This is to ensure that we are absorbing more carbon emissions in our value chain than we emit. So I'm going to wrap up. I see you coming up now. I'm going to wrap up really quickly by just summarizing why sustainability is so important for us at H&M and why it has been integrated into everything that we do. Besides the obvious of doing the right thing and doing the responsible thing, it helps us with business resilience by securing future resources. It allows us to provide our customers with a unique customer offering. And of course, our customers also demand us to be a good brand as well. It helps us to create more stable production markets. And one of the reasons why we are so vocal about our goals and our ambitions is because we want to be top of mind for innovations and have first mover advantage. Lastly, it will help us to keep and attract talent. So I hope with this simple sharing that you guys will also come on board with us together in pursuit to lead the change towards a sustainable fashion future. Thank you.
All right, Xin-Yi will take a couple of questions. I think we have a couple of questions for you. Do bear in mind that the questions were put through to Slido while you were talking. So if you find any of the questions sort of like asking you stuff that you've already said, you can feel free to skip it, okay?
How do you balance the marketing activities which are imminent? There is no balance actually. What we are trying to do is to integrate sustainability into everything that we do. So obviously now if you come to our stores, you see that we are talking a lot more about sustainability in a loud way because our actions are starting to result into very tangible things that our customers can relate to. So that's why in recent years, we have been able to be a lot more vocal about our sustainability initiatives as well as our achievements because a lot of work has been done in the background. And today, now, we are able to talk about it in a very tangible way that our customers can understand. So not really a matter of balance. In fact, all of the communication we do when it comes to sustainability, the budget actually comes directly from the marketing department as well as our PR department. So this is totally not a separate thing for us. How do you lead the change to influence the textile industry since there is very low recycling? So what I shared earlier is basically what we are trying to do. One of the key things about that partnership with HK Rita is that we need to make sure that it is cost efficient and that it's mobile as well. So we are investing, because of being one of the largest fashion retailers, we have the resources to invest into these technologies and to get our suppliers to have buy-in to use them as well. Because we are one of the biggest clients in many of these textile manufacturing countries, we actually are able to reward our suppliers when they act on sustainability. So, of course, when suppliers do not adhere to our sustainability commitments or our ambitions, we will slowly actually scale back on our businesses with them. So this is one of the ways that we are able to have a lot more push because of our size and scale. Yes, that's all, right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
A big hand, please, ladies and gentlemen, for Wong, Xin-Yi, H&M, Hennes Mauritz Sustainability Department. H&M, we move on to Wipro Unza, Managing Director, Southeast Asia and Board of Directors, Singapore. Would you please join me to welcome Kumar Chander, ladies and gentlemen. And he's going to talk to us about sustainability and pioneering the green factory ideology.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's really an honor to be here at this Sustainable Brands event today. And I'm going to speak to you about our journey into sustainability at Wipro, about how we started, how has it evolved over the years, and what lies ahead for us. So let me start by introducing my organization. I don't think many of you know Wipro, but you might be more familiar with our brands that we sell here. At least on our table, we had Maiden, who's our retail partner, and one of our biggest associates. They would definitely know our brands, and I'm sure many of you might be using these popular brands like Safi, Enchanta, Dashing, Romano, Caddy Jr., and BioEssence. These are amongst the consumer brands that we sell. So we are an India origin group, and Unza, Unza is part of Wipro because we acquired it in the year 2007. Wipro is, for some of you may know, is really known as an IT company. It's a conglomerate with many business interests, but it really started off in the fast-moving consumer goods space. Wipro, in fact, is an acronym for Western India Vegetable Products, which was the first product that we used to sell, which later became Western India Products and then Wipro. So though our group's origins were in India, we have acquired companies across Southeast Asia, the UK and the Middle East. And as a result of that, we have grown, and these are some of our brands. Malaysia happens to be our second largest market in the world outside of India. And it's really the acquisition of Unza that helped us pioneer into Southeast Asia and do many more acquisitions, the latest of them being the Splash Corporation, which we have done this year in May. Our international business accounts for roughly over 50% of our $1 billion personal care business. So sustainability has been a core agenda for us, and I would say that it is part somewhere of the DNA of Wipro itself. Wipro Limited, our parent, has been doing sustainability in the IT space. And in fact, many of you may not be aware, but the New York Stock Exchange has something called the Dow Jones Green Index, or the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, which they started 8 years ago. And they choose companies where investors want to invest in what is a company that is engaged well into sustainability. And Wipro has been part of that index since inception every year for the last 8 years. They do drop companies in case they are not performing as well. So being inspired by that, we wanted to look at what we could do in the consumer space, and we started off with something which was called EcoEye, which was supposed to be our internal initiative, where we were largely looking at our factories, we were looking at electricity, we were looking at water consumption, and how we could overall reduce our carbon emissions and energy footprint. So as we've expanded through acquisitions, we sort of extended this into more kinds of initiatives, and also added to the initiatives beyond just water and electricity. So a lot of sustainability, I think some of the speakers spoke of this, and some of the questions said they're about talk. And I'm sure you would all like to find out something about how does the sustainability journey translate in terms of actual results and tangible results, and I will share that a couple of slides ahead. So we are a commercial enterprise, and we are expected to grow. So our energy footprint does grow as we grow. So how we defined our energy goal is we said, we will try and make the same product using less. That means if we sell 1 ton or 1,000 kilos or 1,000 liters of a product, whatever is the water and energy that we consume should over time come down, right? So that's the way that we have defined the metric that we would be tracking. So as we evolved, what we found, we wanted to do more. The first step was to get an ISO. Typically, there's an ISO 14001, which certifies a factory as having environmentally sound operations. What we found that was not doing justice to the number of things that we needed to do. So we were looking what other certifications could we go in for to make our factory truly green. And we were quite surprised to find that there were really no such certifications available. Nobody really had a standard which said that this is what makes your factory green. So we came up saying that we should have our own ideology and our own program to decide when our factory would be called a green factory, okay? And so it's an internal competition that we've started up for each of our factories. They get measured not by themselves. Another group comes and audits their operations to see how well they're doing. And we have norms. The entry point is if you don't have the ISO 14001, then you can't even participate. If you have that, you can participate. And we're not looking at the absolute numbers, but what is the improvement that you've done from the prior period. And depending on the improvement you've done, you get a certain points. And based on that, you could get awarded a bronze, a silver, or a gold. We've been running that program for the last 4 years. The best case is we got one factory getting a silver, okay? And we've had a couple of factories getting bronze. We've not had even one factory qualifying for gold yet, okay? Because the measures are quite tough in terms of what they have to do to be qualified as a green factory. But our teams are still proud because every year they're still improving. And as with every passing year, the goal becomes that much more difficult. So what is the kind of results that we've seen from that program? The first is in terms of, we identified that PVC was one of the most harmful plastics, and we wanted to eliminate PVC from our operations. And we focused on that, and we got first one factory to become PVC free. And once it was PVC free, all the other factories said, wow, this is possible to do. And there was excitement amongst them to also participate. And today we have all of our factories as zero PVC. That means we don't use PVC in any of our products or in any of the factory operations. The second one that we took on, for example, was on chasing waste. Now, this is something that we added 3 years ago, and it's something that we learned because one of our competitors announced that they were going to be doing a waste reduction program. And we said, wow, this is something that we should look at. We've not been looking at this at all. So the first job was, it took us almost a year and a half to get the metrics right as to how much waste we were generating. Because you can't control something until you start measuring it. And to measure the waste, we said we have to look at all aspects of the waste, right? And there was waste, and these are, places where we have offices that are clubbed with plants. So you have the factory waste, and you have waste that's also coming from offices. So I will share the numbers of how much waste reduction we got just after this in the next 2 slides. But to say that, it was a fantastic opportunity because, it was a goal that we set for our employees, and they decided to participate. And today, our waste levels are down significantly, as well as we've been able to achieve something called landfill waste factories. Let me just explain that. So out of all the waste that we generate in a factory or our offices, there's something called landfill waste which goes and is buried in a landfill. That is obviously the most damaging to the environment, right? And we learned from one of our peers that they were chasing a goal of having zero landfill coming out from their factories. And we said, wow, this looks interesting. How do we go about it? And when we first went to our team said, look, it's possible to reduce our landfill waste, but we can never eliminate it. That was the starting point until one factory actually became zero. The moment that happened, everybody was keen to figure out, how did they go about it? So today, out of our 7 factories, we have 3 which are already zero landfill waste generating factories. And over the next 2 years, we hope that all our factories will become zero landfill waste. I talked about employees, and this is an important piece here. The biggest problem for us was not the factories, it was actually the offices. Getting the office people to segregate the waste was the most difficult challenge that we had. And we put it back to HR saying that, look, how do we educate our employees to segregate the waste? They not only had to segregate, the most difficult part was if they bought a plastic bag of food in a plastic container, they had to rinse the container before they disposed it, right? And that's a big change of habit. All it took was for us to get one office motivated enough to do it. Once that happened, everybody said, wow, if they can do it, we are not going to be behind. We also want to participate in this journey, right? And soon, which is why we have 3 office cum factories which are now zero landfill waste, right? The main, barrier to achieving landfill waste was segregation of waste. And until we're able to achieve that, we can't achieve nil landfill waste. There's another example that I want to share. You see some pictures of birds here. All this greenery you see is one of our factories in Indonesia. And we had extra land there, and the idea was, could we create a biodiversity park, right? And what that is was, my son tells me that he doesn't see birds in the morning when he gets up. I'm sure all of you know in urban areas, birds have disappeared. It's the same is true for all cities. Birds are disappearing. And we said, if we can set up a biodiversity park, can we get the birds back? That was the objective given to the team. And we had an environmental scientist coming and helping us, advising us. And they said that if we plant the flora and fauna that was there 20 years ago, maybe it might work. And that was the thought. And let me share with you what the result was. We had 22 species of birds which had disappeared off that part of Indonesia, actually coming back. So it's very interesting now we have more environmentalists coming and bird watchers wanting to come to our factory than we have statutory body people coming in, right? And the factory looks very green. And so entire employees are excited about it. The ecosystem in that city is excited about it. The entire community feels that it's added back to that location where our factory is, right? So this is something we're very proud of, and now we're trying to extend this into other factories and other places wherever we have land. I promised to show you some numbers, so let me talk a little bit about that. So, when you're talking numbers, you need to have a baseline. For us, many of these initiatives started in 2013-14, and we sort of look at that as the baseline. So what this is showing you is how much we've reduced. And I talked about, getting employees involved in this. If I look at the refrigerants, it came from one of our employees saying that because of the greenhouse effect, we should reduce the amount of refrigerant that we use to refill in our air conditioners. And it was not an area that we were looking at, but by good maintenance, good practices, ensuring that the gas doesn't escape out, we were actually able to bring that down by 72%. If you look at water consumption, which is at the bottom, some of you may not be able to see that number, it's around 39%, which is close to 40%. What this means is that whatever water we were using in 2013-14, if we were using X liters of water, we are using 40% less than that now to make that 1 ton of product. I know 40% doesn't sound like a lot, but let me give you the number in liters. That's around 30 million liters of water per year we save, right? That 40% is around 30 million liters of water. So in companies like ours, which are involved in making small packs, a lot of water gets used. I had to explain to my employees, they were very worried that we were reducing the water inside our products. That was not the case. Water in factories is used for cleaning, it's used for cooling, not only inside the product, right? Almost whatever goes into the product, another equal quantity goes into uses for cleaning and cooling, etc. So it's that additional water that we were using for other purposes that we've been able to significantly reduce. And half the time, the problem is not the usage, but the hidden losses. You have piping has been set up in many of these factories many years ago. And one of our biggest factories, we got a 25% improvement just by changing the pipes, because the pipes were leaking water, and because we were not measuring it, we never knew how much water we were actually losing. And similarly, we've done it, you can see in waste is down by around 42%. Plastics is another area that I spoke around, which is down around 16%. And the first two obviously relate to our energy. The first three, diesel, electricity, and energy consumption, are effectively a measure of our carbon footprint. So let me go ahead. So besides, we were doing work in the factories, employees came back and said, can we do something in the offices, right? And it was interesting because it was led by the employees and not by us. And they said, what could we focus on? We said, can we eliminate plastic bottles? Like I see here, all of you are using glasses and it looks very sustainable, which is very good. And if you come to our offices also, you'll find that there are no plastic bottles. They've got eliminated because the employees wanted to eliminate them. Including the employees themselves used to carry bottles, and they got scolded by the other employees saying, you're not supposed to carry a bottle. So when they give away gifts during annual dinners and things like that, they started giving water bottles that people could carry and refill, so that they could carry water from home or they could fill it in the office, so that we didn't have to have plastic bottles at all, right? And they mention it very boldly, saying no plastic bottles allowed. We try and train the visitors who come. It's a difficult journey. It's not been achieved in all our offices. We have close to around 20 offices around the world. We've achieved this in around 12, but it's something that we are actively pursuing. Yep. I want to talk a little bit about paper as well. So you all know this, right? This is typically you go and buy a ream of paper. This is around 2.5 kilos. So how much paper do you think you would use in your own offices? Let me ask the group, do you know? It's difficult to find out about consumption. So what we said is, let's monitor purchase. Purchase is easy to monitor. So we said, whatever is purchased ultimately is getting consumed, right? And therefore we started monitoring purchase of paper. And this is how much paper we were consuming per year. It was between 9 to 16 reams per employee per year. We have 10,000 employees worldwide. Okay, so imagine 10,000 into 15 is 150,000 reams of paper, which is going in, right? And once we became aware of this and we could set into play that it was being looked at, it started reducing. People were doing unnecessary photocopying, they were questioning what they had to do. The net result was that we could get a 40% reduction in the amount of paper being used in the offices since the drive began. The second area was electricity, and the third I already talked about was the plastic bottles. So all in all, what we were doing in the factories, we've also been able to extend out into our offices. So why are we chasing this? You know, our belief is that consumers will look for companies that have a purpose and stand for a broader set of values and beliefs, and who are doing good for society. And we have a core belief on good citizenship, and sustainability is part of our strategy plan since the last 8 years, saying that what else can we do to be more conscious and contribute back. What we find is that employees want to be engaged, but they need to be educated, right? And the more we've done this, the more has been an increase in employees' advocacy. They are very happy to recommend our organization for other people to try, and there's a whole improvement in the amount of pride. When we acquire new companies, the first thing they come back, we acquired Splash Corporation. We had their employees over to visit us in Malaysia for an induction visit. The first thing they notice is, wow, you all are doing so much on sustainability. When can we start, right? And so they are also eager to immediately start participating because they, as all of us are reading about what's happening, all of us do want to play a role. Quite often we don't know how to do it. So people are looking for routes, and so our experience is that if we can engage the employees, we can get significant activity generated. When we started this whole exercise of PVC reduction, voluntarily employees said that we will not bring plastic. Styrofoam plastic is also a form of PVC. So they said, we'll not bring any more styrofoam into the office, right? And they instructed all the vendors, they took HR's help for it, and they themselves are not carrying it in anymore, right? And a lot of these things also have a positive impact on the bottom line. If it's electricity reduction or water reduction, there's a straight commercial benefit. If you reduce plastics, you also have a commercial benefit from that. So it not only makes the environment sustainable, it also makes great business sense. At least that's what we've always believed. So we don't think this journey is over. We think we're just getting started. It's an ongoing journey. Our belief is that much more remains to be done in our curve of sustainability. We are looking at what our peers are doing. We see sustainability is not a source of competitive advantage. We think sustainability is a source of human survival, right? And therefore, we are happy to share what we're doing with our competitors, and we are happy to learn what our competitors are doing so that we can also take up those practices. So we are constantly sort of looking at periodicals to see what is happening in our industry, who's taking up new initiatives, and whether we can bring them within Wipro Unza. And that's the basis of some of our target setting, and we find that metrics work very well. We want all our factories to be zero landfill, and in one of the factories, we are trying to make it zero waste. That means no waste actually gets generated. It's an idea. We think that it is possible to do. If you can get one, then we'll see about the others. On electricity, water, etc., every year we take a target of at least a minimum of 5% reduction over the previous year, right? So it's always based on the goal that you've already met. How do you improve further on that? And there are challenges. Let me share with this. For example, on plastics, we took a call to enter shampoos. Now, shampoos' usage of plastic per ton is more than many other categories, right? But that's a business call that we took. So that reduced the amount of saving that we had on plastics. Because while we were reducing plastic, we were also entering another category, which was reducing our savings. But we said, it's fine. We will report what is the actual number. So that year, we had an increase in our plastics because we were chasing it in one of the countries where we launched this category. So while, say, the plastics used in shower had reduced or the plastics used in skincare had reduced, because before that, say, we had a large fragrance business, but since we entered shampoos, fragrance was using glass, whereas shampoos is using plastic. So suddenly you're using more plastic than before. So, but we think that as a commercial organization, we have to remain commercial, yet embed the sustainability into our objectives, and that's what we've done. And the year after that, including the shampoos, we could still get a 10% dip, right? So the first year it went up, but we could still go ahead and get back a dip. And that's how we intend to chase it. What are some of the areas we see in the future? One is green chemistry, because in our formulations also we are saying that can we make it more sustainable? There's the whole concept of use of cold process. I briefly spoke about it on the panel. We have a shampoo. Shampoos are typically like, like you do cooking in the kitchen. You cook a shampoo. That's when it gets all its good properties. So can you make like a cold salad? Can you make a cold process shampoo? And our first efforts at this were a disaster. When we went to the customer, they said, I won't use this for my cat. I won't use it for myself, for sure. But it took time. It took us 3 years to crack the way to make a cold process shampoo that could actually beat a regular hot process shampoo, right? And it was cost effective to do so, it was sustainable to do so, and it gave us a product that was superior. So that's where things like cold process and green chemistry comes into play. We would look at solar panels. We were very happy to hear of the minister's announcement this morning of the incentives that they're going to offer for solar paneling. We're doing some. We will definitely looking at enhancing that. And the last part is how do you make your offices green? LED lighting is the simplest one. If you have not done it, I would strongly urge you to do it. The payback is less than 1 year. If you put up whatever money you invest in the LED lighting, your electricity bill reduction pays that money back, the investment back, in less than 1 year. But that's only the first step. There are many other ways to make a green office. We have one office in Bangalore which has no air conditioning because of the way they've structured their building. We are hoping that we can bring some of those practices at least to reduce the amount of air conditioning that we today have to do. So that really is bringing me to the end of my lecture, and I would be happy to take questions at this point. Right, I think there's a question on how much resources. So resources, monetary resources was not very significant. Actually, it was quite small, but we did have to hire an environmental scientist. We had to put some people on the team to be dedicated to this job. Okay, it was part of their work. It was not a full-time job for anybody. Maybe 20% or maybe 10% of their role of the people who worked on it. The costs, I think, were very low. We're talking of sub $10,000, $15,000. So the costs itself are not high. But it was the commitment to the exercise that, organizational effort and energy was much higher, would be the simple answer. Right. Any other questions?
Nope, looks like that's the only one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's show appreciation to Kumar Chander, Wipro Unza, MD Southeast Asia and Board of Directors Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, Sustainable Brands KL has been running for several years now. And of course, Sustainable Brands has been running around the world for many, many more years than they have been running in KL. Now, over the years, we found that there's been a shift. It used to be people coming to conferences like this, wondering how they can get the information, go back and influence management. Today, we see that it is really good to see, like Wipro, it's management down to employees. It's the other way around. Very soon, we hope in the very near future, there will be some kind of integration where ideas can just be put forward and without any barrier to management or staff. That would be a really perfect one. I think Wipro is leading the way in that one. Congratulations to you, Wipro. Now, it's my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce Kasturi Nathan, KPMG Partner Head of Governance and Sustainability, and he's going to share with us her insights into ESG and SDG reporting. Kasturi Nathan.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, SB'19KL, for having me here. Me and team, thank you. A very good afternoon to all present. I know it's been back-to-back, and I'm your second last speaker before lunch. Bear with me, nevertheless. So I have a very interesting topic for you, ESG, SDG reporting and state of play. KPMG's recent, not quite recent, but a fairly representative research has shown that most world's leading companies are still not doing enough on business cases, on reporting, on business cases for taking action on sustainable development goals. Within Malaysia alone, a review found that only 15% of the top 100 companies by revenue in Malaysia who reported on their sustainable performance incorporated the SDGs in their corporate reporting. All right, so there are huge business opportunities. That's my call with all of you today. Huge business opportunities, gentlemen, inherent in tackling the world's toughest problems and internalizing those problems and recognizing that within your supply chain, within your organizations, and for you to understand how exactly should you be developing processes, activities, and disclosures therein within that. So these few leaders who clearly understand these requirements stand to benefit from recognizing that SDGs are powerful catalysts for innovation, partnerships, and market transformations that build businesses. And clearly these companies will definitely be at a cost advantage when communicating with their investors, suppliers, customers, and governments, or even any other stakeholders who are taking increasing interest in the contribution of the businesses to long-term value creation. Let me start with this slide. It's a bit of an overload on it, but let me just very quickly explain. This is a KPMG report on Expect the Unexpected. It goes to show a system of 10 sustainability megatrends, right? For example, food security, climate change, deforestation, water scarcity, that will impact businesses over the next 20 years. It is important for business leaders to understand the system of forces, assess its implications for their own organizations, and devise strategies for managing the risks and harnessing its opportunities. Increasing number of shareholders are focusing, ladies and gentlemen, on ESG issues as we speak to protect long-term value. Asset owners and managers are clearly increasingly integrating ESG further into their investment strategies. And there is a growing body of evidence that shows good ESG performance is positively correlated with higher returns and financial performance. In fact, if I could just very quickly share with you, there was a recent question posed by a potential investor to a leading company's CEO, and the question was, how do you spend your weekend time? It goes to show that the investors are clearly wanting to understand what is the tone at the top's value proposition on work-life balance, on societal value preservation. State of play in Asia, ladies and gentlemen. A recent HSBC survey, 2018 Sustainable Financial and ESG Investing Report, found that even though reputation is a key driver amongst reporters, the level of disclosure of ESG policies vary from region to region. Globally, of course, major investors and issuers are not disclosing their policies and still have a long way to go on transparency. Most investors and issuers say they see no barriers to increasing ESG investing and financial commitments. However, we see the disparity in Asia. Right, in Asia, investors name a lack of opportunity as the main reason that they are not increasing their ESG investments, and issuers, on the other hand, are clearly not increasing ESG financing because of low investor demand. So this table here, this chart in here goes to show clearly there is a lack in Asia where companies seem to share what is easy to share rather than what is important. And and that on the flip side, or on at the expense of higher quality and reliable information. Reporting state of play. There has been a tenfold increase, ladies and gentlemen, in the number of reporting requirements and guidance documents related to corporate reporting on ESG in the last 20 years. Clearly, we find governments, NGOs, as we have stock exchanges, and as we have also heard the panel speakers led by YBO, clearly we find policies and regulations are on the rise. Between 2016-17 alone, 17 countries have introduced 86 significant legislative requirements. Stock exchanges, some of the leading stock exchanges have also amended, revised the listing requirements to again, to propose, advocate reporting requirements on ESG. What are the markets saying on the index? Clearly shows that the MSCI in this chart you find the Morgan Stanley index. Clearly the social responsible investment index having a higher rate of return, and is demonstrating a higher play as compared to the conventional index. And performance closer to home across FTSE for good, you clearly find the dividends yield is higher across the FTSE for good versus Malaysia index as compared to the financial only index, which is pretty much led by KLCI and the EMAS index. So the drivers from a regulatory perspective, if I may very quickly take you through, let me start with the code. Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance clearly advocates for the board to be responsible to ensure that its strategic plan of the company supports long-term value creation, which includes strategies in addressing environment, social, and economic considerations. The board is also required to set an appetite that the board expects management to operate and ensure that an appropriate risk management framework is available to identify, analyze both financial and non-financial risks. At the same time, the board is also clearly responsible to ensure the integrity of the company's financial and non-financial reporting. So clearly, as you can see, just over the Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance, there is a clear advocacy for both listed and non-listed companies to demonstrate its performance, its disclosures on not only financial but non-financial risks. And in the same book, which is the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance, large companies are clearly pushed to advocate and demonstrate its ability to adopt integrated reporting. Integrated reporting is a form of a reporting which includes both. It's a long-term, it's a value creative report that clearly goes to requires companies to demonstrate both its short, medium, and long-term value creation, both across financial and non-financial risks. Over at the listing requirements, you find the listing requirements revised in 2015. Listed issuers have since been required to produce a narrative statement in their annual report, clearly demonstrating its management of material, environment, economic, and social risks and opportunities. And it is within this, it is within a framework that companies are increasingly required to pursue. So clearly, companies are required to have a governance structure, although how sustainability is clearly addressed, the tone at the top, which goes to, again, advocate, address, and manage ESG risks and opportunities. What is your governance structure? Listed companies are then also required to understand the material risks, ESG risks and opportunities? How do you identify your material risks? How do you identify your stakeholders which bear an impact to the operations of your company? And how do you then disclose these risks and opportunities in a balanced, comparable, and meaningful manner? And this is clearly advocated or guided through Sustainability Reporting Guide. This was issued by Bursa Malaysia back in 2015 and revised as a second edition in 2018. So Bursa Malaysia clearly provides a toolkit, a guide, and 6 toolkits that provides or that allows companies to understand the reporting obligations and requirements, or for that matter, the better practices that you could deploy to internalize within your company. On that same note, in December 2018, Bursa additionally issued a letter to all listed issuers requiring companies or urging companies to clearly establish UN SDGs that provide the impetus for furthering sustainability development agenda and that internalized within the companies, closely, again, urging companies to consider their urgent attention on climate change and widespread impact on society, publication of recommendations by the TCFD, Task Force on Climate Change Financial Disclosures, and implementation of the GRI standards, whichever is seen to be more suitable and meaningful given the operations of your company. So clearly there is a higher advocacy by the listed issuer, by the regulators, by the authorities to encourage companies to disclose, to first and foremost to identify, manage material matters, to then disclose this through how exactly are you managing risks and opportunities. So the value creation of reporting non-financial matters, ladies and gentlemen, let me very quickly take you through that. Clearly increasingly we find less value in the financials of or in reporting financials only. So evidence has clearly showed that only 20% of the company's value is on the face of the financial statement. 80% of the company's value is in the notes to the financial statements, which typically relates to the non-financial information. So clearly there is a need for companies to increasingly understand these risks. What are the risks? What are the top 5, both financial and non-financial risks of your company, and what are what are the opportunities in which you will need to identify? Influence the long-term strategy, policies, and business plans of your company. Boards are increasingly required, management is increasingly required to streamline processes, reduce cost and improve efficiency, benchmark with performance standards and voluntary initiatives depending on how your industry and peers are performing, avoid being implicated in negative publicity, and of course, performance, disclosure and performance in undertaking the processes and activities you do. So aligning, ladies and gentlemen, your SDGs to the value creation process. So business leaders are again required increasingly to ensure companies are in touch with global reporting trends and are in good position to anticipate and respond to change. As demands for disclosure continue to grow, companies need to ensure that they have up-to-date and efficient system to collect, analyze, and disclose ESG information, and they are able to convince regulators and the investors community on the reliability of this information. The merging of both financial and non-financial reporting will accelerate very quickly in the next few years. Currently there is no single methodology for measuring and reporting business progress, impact on SDG. The SDGs developed in 2015, as you can see, carries 17 goals and 232 indicators. And clearly these indicators are a means of implementation for companies to pursue. Companies are increasingly using SDG goals as in setting their targets. As you can see, the rise in 2018, companies are also focused, mainly focused, as we can see, or the research undertaken by KPMG on these SDGs, climate action, decent work and economic growth, responsible and consumption and production, and gender equality. So these are the top 4 pursued SDGs, as we find across the globe. Again, and there is also opportunity for cross-functional and collaborative activities within the organization. So there is, the silos will have to be broken down, companies within departments and processes will need to collaborate to achieve the right results. This chart here goes to show how the 5 components within any organization can quite easily be linked to the SDGs. So you find areas pertaining to leadership and governance, social capital, human capital, business models, innovation, and environment, having a clear connection to all 17. And again, it goes to show how much of these are internalized and how do you decide what is a direct impact SDG versus an indirect impact SDG, and you thereafter look at initiatives and KPIs to manage and monitor them. So maybe very quickly, how to report on the SDGs. We find in the last 2 years, of course, this is since 2015, since it was launched, there was only a 40%, 4 in 10 top companies were acknowledging. Increasingly, there is a higher number of companies which are progressively reporting SDGs or which have internalized SDGs within the companies. The SDGs which are commonly prioritized are SDG 13, 8, and 3. Least prioritized are 15, 2, and 14. Reporting on SDG, this is a report card that just quickly, very quickly, on a very high-level basis goes to show how companies are reporting on SDGs. And in 3 categories: understanding SDGs, prioritizing the SDGs, and measuring SDG performance. And you find companies doing pretty well on understanding SDGs and prioritizing it to relevant matters. But when it comes to reporting business case for SDGs and creating or building smart goals, performance goals on SDGs, or disclosing indicators to measure these SDGs, they are pretty weak, right? You find the Ds closer to that end. All right, so onto my last 2 slides. I just want to take you through how corporate Malaysia or companies such as yourselves, or business leaders such as yourselves, may want to embark and embrace your positioning, your understanding on SDGs, and how you then internalize to make good business sense of ESG performance. Typically, we start with a solid understanding of the company, with the SDGs across the company and the relevance to the business. Then you agree to which SDG has most impact, be it direct and indirect, and the company should then focus on. Designing appropriate performance targets would typically be step 3, and measurement systems to manage the impact of these SDGs, embedding these. And finally, communicating to disclose SDG programs and performance to your stakeholders. My last slide, ladies and gentlemen. I definitely want to leave you with the reality bites. ESG evaluation by investors is clearly here to stay. Reporting companies need to ensure the best form in which they communicate their efforts in managing ESG risks and to demonstrate how they are safeguarding these non-financial risks. And clearly, sustainable brands, as advocated by the speakers even prior to me, will prosper on that note. And you clearly find, I find Larry Fink's quote very relevant. With the next 5 years, gentlemen, all investors will measure a company's impact on society, government, and environment to determine its worth. And so with that, thank you. Happy to take any questions, though. How is ESG reporting relevant to SMEs, particularly non-listed private-owned companies? ESG reporting is a form of reporting which does not recognize listed, non-listed, or for that matter, or how big or how small you are. It is required for all companies simply because these are the risks and opportunities that is addressing your business, that is a threat or a risk to your business. So clearly we need to understand the opportunities that is within these risks that we are facing as a business, and the question is, how are we then managing to address, or how are we measuring to address these as a way of doing business? And the outcome of this, ladies and gentlemen, is the reporting. So reporting is not the goal in which you address SDGs. Reporting is only an outcome of your application of SDGs. And clearly, to that, again, to re-emphasize, the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance does not apply to listed issuers only. It is required for both non-listed. It is a recommended code for both non-listed and SME large companies to apply and embrace the non-financial aspects of reporting. View on assurance of ESG reporting. Well, this is the next phase, I would say, the next phase of the ESG, the ESG, I would say the wave, right? The next phase of ESG wave that will come for us to ensuring the credibility of your information. So it's all about how do we ensure, or how do we present reliable information to our stakeholders? And one way of assuring reliability and credibility of your non-financial information is through assurance. And of course, but at the state, most companies, state of where Malaysian companies are at, as I speak at present, we probably have, we cannot jump into assurance all too quickly, simply because we need to ensure our data is reliable, there is comprehensiveness and there is completeness in our data, in our systems, our processes, our people need to be up to par before we embrace assurance. But clearly assurance is the next wave.
Okay, I think that concludes
I
it.
took the questions well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Ray.
much. Give it up, please, for Kasturi Nathan. Allow me to introduce this next two gentlemen who will have a conversation and share some of their thoughts with all of us this morning. We have from Philip Morris International, Vice President, External Affairs, East Asia and Australia. Would you please join me to welcome Richard James? And having the conversation with him will be Daniel Crone, Sustainable Brands US. I'd like to know the answer.
Very good. So we're going to talk about, can a tobacco company be sustainable? And I'm sure that is a very intriguing question to all of you in the audience. And Richard, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Daniel.
To be able to talk about this. So you guys recently joined the SB community as a contingent corporate member, and just want to understand why you chose the sustainability or the sustainable brands community, and and can you tell me about how you guys are planning to design a smoke-free environment or future, and what that means?
Okay, well, thanks very much for the opportunity to join today, Daniel. I think to your first question, the reason we're looking at sustainable brands is that precisely the kind of conversation we were having this morning, where I feel like it's an inclusive conversation. I feel like people can come with their solutions and share honestly and openly. And also, we feel like a lot of the solutions that are being presented here are coming from the business community themselves. When we heard about the plastics issues this morning, it was great to hear what the associations and businesses are presenting, because ultimately I think that's where the solutions are going to come. The NGO communities have a very important role in raising issues and applying pressure, but the solutions ultimately will come from, I think, from business to some of these big sustainability issues. To your second question, for us, and the question we're being posed today, I mean, for us, sustainability is really at the core of our product. We are a traditional cigarette manufacturer. We have around 150 million consumers around the world. And I think everybody knows the issues around cigarettes, the addictiveness of them, the fact that they are extremely harmful, the fact that they cause disease. So for us, for decades now, our consumers, regulators have been really demanding of us to do something about the product. So for the last 10 years, we've invested about $5 billion, and we've had a team of around 400 scientists working on new products. That these new products address the core issue, which is that when you burn tobacco, you produce a lot of very harmful chemicals. So these products do not burn tobacco, and we're very clear, we're not saying these are safe products, we're not saying these are products that are good for you, but the consensus from public health communities around the world, in the UK, in Canada, and US, seems to be that if people don't quit, and that's the best thing that anyone can do, is to quit tobacco use, but the World Health Organization tells us there's a billion smokers, and they also tell us that 90% of those people, despite all the information and all the regulatory interventions, they will not quit. So we felt it's incumbent to us to come up with products that are better, a better option for people who would otherwise continue to use cigarettes. So that's why I say sustainability for us. I could talk about what we're doing in terms of our carbon footprint, some of the things that were discussed today. But for us, it comes back to the problem of the product and how it impacts the individual and impacts our consumers directly.
Yeah. I know that there's a lot of controversy and history of sort of deceit within the tobacco industry and people's perspective of it. Can you tell me and the audience about how you guys are trying to make amends for that point of view, that perspective?
I think whatever we do, there's always going to be a lot of skepticism, and we understand that. We don't have a great history, and we come from a pretty low reputation base. When we do reputation surveys on us every couple of years, and we're somehow down the bottom of the list, to be quite frank, on that side. But all we can do is let people judge us by our actions. If I look at the new products that we are developing, we're being very open and transparent about them. We're submitting them to external review. Our heated tobacco product has been authorized this year in the US by the Food and Drug Administration as appropriate for the protection of public health. It's the only product that's been authorized in the US, despite there being hundreds available. All other products will have to go through the same process, but we have, and it's been authorized. We haven't started selling in the US yet, but that will come. So we are trying to be as transparent as possible about our science. We are asking others to judge it. We're not saying, trust us. We're asking others to look at it. And we're also trying to change the way that we operate our business and publishing our metrics. For example, today, if you look at our research and development costs, which are very high, more than 90% is directed at these new products, not at traditional tobacco products. We still have to do some for regulatory purposes, but pretty much all of our research and development is on new products. So it's by being as transparent as possible. We invite people to come to our research facilities, we invite people to assess our science, and ultimately they make the decision. It's not up for me to sell a kind of PR story on how we're transforming. It's up to others to judge.
Yeah. I know a lot of people would say that tobacco companies should be excluded from sustainability and that type of community and that type of work. Can you tell me, why sustainability is important to PMI, and kind of elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, I think we do get that question. I'm sure a number of people here today probably think that we shouldn't be here, and that's fine. We're not going to get into a kind of a debate and defend ourselves on that front. But as I said at the beginning of the conversation, I think sustainability is about inclusion, and it's about making all organizations that these metrics and that these KPIs be incumbent upon them. And that's something that we're trying to do ourselves. And as I also mentioned, we didn't really have a choice, right? I mean, as I said, in areas like our carbon footprint, I think on the Carbon Disclosure Project, we've been an A+ company for the last 5 years. We are trying to make a lot of inroads in our areas of inclusion and diversity. We currently have about 35% women in senior management. That's nowhere where it needs to be, but it's on the upward trajectory. To us, it comes back to the core problem that we have, the core challenge, and that is how can we address the harm caused by the products which we have been selling for decades all around the world. And as I said, this is not just about us. I think the whole industry, other manufacturers are trying to look at the same thing, are trying to continue this transformation journey themselves. And we are not there yet. I think last year, 15% of our revenues came from these new products, up from 0 a couple of years ago. It's our goal to have around 40% of our consumer base converted to these new products if they continue to smoke by 2025. So we have to get there, and we will be judged on those metrics as we go along the journey, and people will say in a few years' time whether they believe us or, so it's out there.
Yep, absolutely. I think we'd like to take a question if there's anything on Slido. Maybe there's not yet. We do have one. So, I'm trying to quit. You want to take the first one?
Okay. Well, I think you just have to quit. If you're trying to quit, you should quit. I am not going to sit up here and tell you to keep using a tobacco product. That's not our position. But as I said, if you do not quit, then you should look at the science around these alternative products, the smoke-free products. Again, I'm not sitting up here saying that these are healthy, these are good for you, but it's undoubtedly UK authorities, Canadian authorities, American, European are saying that this is a better option than continuing. On cigarette butts, this is something that we briefly discussed before. Yes, this is our environmental litter impact from tobacco companies, for sure, cigarette butts. We are working and striving towards finding biodegradable solutions. We're not there yet, but we have to get there. We're also in a process for our new products, which have an electronic device. We are recycling those devices. But what we're doing specifically on cigarette butts is that we run awareness campaigns for smokers. We also give portable cigarette butt receptacles to smokers in different countries. And then ourselves, we run company and community cleanup operations to correct, because it's something that really bothers people. When you see the cigarette butts, it's very unpleasant, and it's another point of contention we just don't really need. We've got enough problems without littering the planet as well. I applaud the courage.
Well, I think we'll just keep moving on.
Yes, that is definitely part of our bottom line, because that's our future business. We can't continue in the same business, otherwise we will be out of business.
Absolutely, absolutely. So can you talk about the goals and the timing for creating a smoke-free world and phasing out tobacco cigarettes? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a lot of people ask our management this question. So it's like, okay, this is all very interesting, but why don't you just stop selling the product? What's stopping you selling cigarettes? And yeah, I guess we could. The problem is that that's not going to really address the societal issues around smoking, because we do have competitors who would just merely pick up the slack. There's also the illicit trade, which would flourish in such a situation. So what we try and do, and what we are doing, is that we avoid launching any more conventional products where we have commercialized our new products. We have 45 countries around the world where we currently sell, including here in Malaysia. And we avoid launching new products in the cigarette category. And second, we divert the majority of our resources to these new products. I mentioned the R&D figure earlier. Also, if you look at globally, our commercial expenditure, more than 60% of our commercial expenditure is now focused on these products last year, even though they only represented 15% of our net revenue. So these are the kind of metrics that we're putting behind, and you know, may well have an impact on certain parts of our business, but we feel it's the right thing to do, and it's the right thing for our business, and it's also for our employees. It's very important for them that we are committed to this task and these actions going forward.
Good. Well, I do want to ask a question because it's become a very popular topic. You see it in the news and the media quite often, and talking about teen vaping. You know, a lot of that is being driven by the flavored products. And can you kind of talk about PMI's, you know, perspective on that and youth nicotine use?
Look, this is a huge issue for the whole industry, and it's something very worrying for us also. And me, I'm also a person. I have children. I don't want them using nicotine products. And this is a phenomenon which we see particularly in the US, and being an American, I have to point to you as well. And unfortunately and surprisingly, the US market for these products has been completely unregulated. And this is what happens when you have no regulation. You have people consuming products with absurd flavors, candy flavors, sugary sweet flavors. You have unabated advertising. We were talking before about Times Square, huge billboard advertising for e-cigarettes. These are things that will be completely unacceptable in most places around the world, but for whatever reason, it's been happening in the US. So I think it's good that there's action being taken. And I think also what we've seen recently in some of the illnesses that we've seen among youth, the Centre for Disease Control came out last week and said these illnesses are the result of people adulterating the product, putting illegal substances, oils inside the product, THC, marijuana oil, things like this, which again points to the need for regulation. So we're fully supportive and engaged with the idea of very strict regulation, because if we were to unleash some kind of situation of widespread youth usage, then it's game over for everybody, right? It's unacceptable to everyone in society, and certainly to us. So I think it's good news that the US government is taking action, banning flavors, and restricting commercialization of some of these products. Is good news.
Yep. Well, it looks like we have some more questions on Slido. So how do you differentiate yourself from others in the industry when it comes to being more sustainable?
Well, I certainly don't want to give ourselves kind of like a halo effect as compared to other manufacturers or industry players. I don't think that's correct. I think I can only speak for what we're doing, and I also do see other manufacturers responding and coming up with similar or like products, and coming up with similar approaches. I do think probably we've been a bit more bold in our public statements on our intentions. And as I said, I guess we'll be judged on that, whether we really live up to that the next few years. So, you know, I'm certainly happy to be working in an organisation where we're making a bold statement about that. So,
absolutely. You want to take the second question?
On disposing cigarette, this is a cigarette, but I think we sort of covered this off. I think it's the second question. Yes, e-cigarettes are based on tobacco, and what people are really looking for when they're using a tobacco product is they're looking for nicotine. And I think that what most public health medical professionals will tell you is that nicotine is not the cause of the problems around smoking and disease. It's, as I said, it's when you burn the tobacco that you produce these very, very bad chemicals. So if you can have a properly regulated product which vaporizes nicotine, which vaporizes tobacco, but doesn't burn it, that is how we can address some of the problems associated with cigarettes. Again, I want to highlight that we're not saying these products are good for people. This is not a safe thing to do, but it seems to be a better alternative than continuing to use cigarettes.
I think we're close to being out of time, and everybody, I'm sure, is very, very hungry, and I know I am. And Richard, I want to say thank you for taking the time to come up here and tell the audience about PMI's initiatives and what you guys are working on. And well, I'm sure I can say this for everybody, but we look forward to seeing the progress.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.